Okay, guys, we're going to begin chapter 4. Remember when you listened last that they walked in on the crime scene and there were orange peels everywhere and orange juice everywhere, and it was all over the balcony. And then they went down and talked to the security guard for the person in the front, and he said that there was one other complaint of the day. Do you remember what it was? You remember that it was Mrs. Cornelius had been upset because she saw someone on her balcony. And then I asked you, how in the world could she be helpful in solving this mystery? So now we're going to read chapter 4. For chapter 4, your focus questions are: who is this chapter about? Where did this chapter take place? What was the problem in this chapter? And what was the solution or outcome? So how did they solve that problem, or what did they decide they were going to do? When you are done with chapter 4, you will have to be able to summarize what happened in this chapter. So I want you to make sure that you can answer these questions. If you can't, you can always go back and listen. Okay, let's begin. Chapter 4. Dink explained about the orange peels they'd found on his uncle's balcony. Roger shook his head. But how would the thief climb the building? He asked. Why don't you go outside and take a look? Josh suggested. Maybe we'll find a clue. Kids, it's pretty late, Roger said. Perhaps you should wait till tomorrow. We'll only stay a minute, Dink said. Well, okay, Roger directed them to a metal door around the corner of the elevator. Dink slid back a long bolt and shoved the door open. They walked out into a narrow, well-lit space behind the building. It was completely enclosed except for an alley that led to the street. Next to the building, a dumpster sat in the shadows. I wonder, Ruth Rose said, staring at the dumpster, what if the thief climbed on top of that? Could he reach the first balcony? Dink stared up. The first 2 floors don't have balconies, he observed. Even standing on the dumpster, I don't see how the crook could have gotten up or down this way. Then he had to go through the front door, Josh said. But if Roger didn't see him, just then an angry voice came out of the darkness. What are you doing back there? This is private property. Who's there? Dink asked. A figure walked out of the shadows. It was Miss Booker. She didn't look happy to see them. It's just us, Dink said. My uncle is Mr. Duncan. We met you at the block party earlier tonight. The woman stomped a few feet from the kids. Her hands were jammed into her coat pockets. She wore a cap pulled down over her orange hair. Why are you kids out here? She asked. There was a robbery in my uncle's apartment, Dink said. Miss Booker nodded. I know. Roger just told me. We thought the crook might have come this way, Ruth Rose said. Yeah, Josh said. Except we have to have wings. Miss Booker looked up the side of the building. She touched the bricks with her long fingers. A few years ago, I could have climbed this, no problem, she said. The kid stared at the woman. Miss Booker smiled. When I was your age, my father and mother owned a carnival. My brothers did the high wire act. They were known as the Flying Bookers. I was the girl on the trapeze. Did you happen to see anyone in the alley? Dink asked. Miss Booker shook her head. The alley was blocked off, she said. Blocked off? How? Ruth Rose asked. I'll show you. The kids followed Miss Booker down the alley towards the front of the building. Right here, Miss Booker said, stopping where the alley met the street. This was the trailer was parked during the block party. A trailer? Dink asked, trying to remember. Just then, Roger opened the front door and leaned out. Donald, your uncle wants you and your friends to come upstairs, he said. Okay, we'll be right in, Dink said. Goodness, Miss Booker. Maybe we'll see you tomorrow. Maybe you will, the woman said. Then she turned and walked back down the dark alley.